What's going on, guys? So I've been getting this question as of lately because I've been wrestling again. And I've wrestled on and off throughout my life when I was younger, through high school, after I stopped competing in bodybuilding. I've always come back to that as a physical means for myself because I love it for different reasons that I'll explain. But this video is about wrestling in your 40s. Is it possible to learn wrestling in your 40s? And this applies to jiu-jitsu and other things, but I think wrestling is a very unique one, where you don't really see people doing it later in life compared to other martial arts like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for different reasons, which I will explain. So the first question is, can you wrestle in your 40s? Now, I'm not 40 years old. I am 36. I'm turning 37 in a few days. And what I will say is this. I've never felt better in terms of my body. So, the primary concern for most people is that can you do it, because can your body even tolerate it? Is your body capable of doing it? And the reality is that when you are wrestling or when you are training for wrestling, what you are doing to your body is probably going to preserve your body for the most part, as long as you're not taking a lot of like low knee shots and dropping to your knee and taking those shots. Then you're probably going to be okay because you're doing a lot of mobility, the conditioning, all these things. So I always have felt the best in my life when I was wrestling or doing some sort of martial art. And so I do believe that you can. Now, here are a few things that you need to do. Number one is, it's not about being aggressive and sparring hard and trying to kill somebody else. When you're wrestling, it's about being in control and learning control. Okay, and I believe that there's no other sport like wrestling. It's to me, it's the most beautiful sport in the world. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel as though it's the only sport in the world, or one of the only sports in the world, where you are competing using your body, and you are thinking the whole time, trying to solve problems. You are problem solving for the entirety of the match. When you're doing a 100-meter sprint, you're not trying to resolve problems. You have a goal, you've trained for it, you're trying to execute, but there's not a lot of critical thinking involved, And let's say in soccer or in football, there is a degree of critical thinking. You have to think about what your next move is and what your next play is, but it's not constant action. So I like to think of wrestling as human chess, human physical chess, where you're using your body and your mind simultaneously to make decisions in real time. That's the mental aspect of it, which is why I think it can be very emotionally and psychologically draining. Now, physically, I don't really know of any other sports besides probably gymnastics that requires that degree of understanding the different elements of fitness, okay? So obviously, strength-based sports, it's all about your strength, not so much about your mobility. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but, it's not about your speed, it's not about all these other things, and in a speed-based sport, it's not about your strength or your flexibility, let's say. Whereas in wrestling, it's a combination and a culmination of every facet of fitness. Your flexibility, your power, your strength, your speed, your agility, literally every part of fitness is being challenged, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. Sure, you're going to get some bumps and bruises, and your ear's going to start to cauliflower up, and these things are normal. But I think that the positives vastly outweigh the negative, and I don't feel that way about every sport. I think a lot of sports are a waste of time, because the risk to the reward is very little, in my opinion and in my experience. Now, in wrestling, I feel that as long as you are doing it properly, and what I mean by properly is you're not going overly aggressive, you're not trying to push the boundaries, you're not trying to kill your sparring partner, you're just trying to learn the skill, you're trying to learn control, you're trying to learn these things, well then it almost becomes playful. And when it's playful, you end up learning the most because you're in that state where you're absorbing the most. And I've learned this, I've had the opportunity, I should say, to train with some of the best people in the world, some of Cuban Olympic wrestlers. And what I really learned from these guys first and foremost, they are the strongest people I've ever met in my life. I have never met anybody as strong as this in my life. When these guys would put their hand and tie up on the back of your head, it literally felt like a machine was crushing you. I've never felt that or experienced that with anyone, this type of strength. But what I learned from them is that they are playing all the time, because when you're in this play state where you are just learning, you are absorbing the most, you are learning the most, you're having fun, you're challenging your athleticism, you're challenging all these different areas of fitness, but at the same time, you are minimizing and mitigating risk, okay? You are enjoying the process. You are probably being challenged cardiovascularly more than anything else, because what other sport in the world requires that degree of output from a muscular standpoint for that duration? Imagine 2-3 minute rounds where somebody is trying to bring you down, somebody's trying to take you down, take a shot on you, trying to throw you. The amount of muscular output required in order to stop that, and even further to try to do the same to that person. So there's so many elements of wrestling that are so beautiful and so natural. You know, one thing I say is, like, when you walk down the street, you're walking down your street and you see kids playing hockey, you don't stop to look. When you are walking, you know, up the block and you see somebody shooting on a basketball net, you don't care. You keep walking. But when you see two people fighting, when you see two people wrestling, every human being stops and looks, because I believe that it is biologically hardwired and ingrained within us to love wrestling, to love fighting, to love grappling. That's a part of being a human being, I believe, on a biological fundamental level. So my advice to you is, and I say this because I'm going to be honest with you and I'm going to be vulnerable and transparent. I've gone back and forth many times in my life. You know, I don't want to be bigger. I do bodybuild, I resistance training. I want to be strong. But I don't want to be bigger. I don't care to be leaner than I am now, much leaner than I am now. And, you know, so I always go back, I oscillate back and forth. I want to wrestle, and then I honestly tell myself I'm too old. I'm too old. But then when I do it, my body feels better than I've ever felt. So then I wonder why I put these limitations on myself and convince myself that I'm too old to do it. Am I ever going to make it to the Olympics? No, I'm not. But that's just being real. And I had a wrestling coach, and his name was Coach Q. And I'm going to leave you with this. He said to me, I said, Coach, do you think that I can do it? Like, do you think that I can be competitive in this? Like, be real with me. Am I too old, you know? That's all I want to know. And he said, Amer, do you love it? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, so then why do you care? And I think that, you know, you always want to win. You always want to compete and all these things. But what I've learned, you know, as I get older and as I approach my 40s is that I never really have done anything for pure selfish reasons, for pure joy, just for me. It's always for business. It's always for competition. It's all like, but it's just for me, pure selfish. And so I always remind myself, and I tell my athletes this in bodybuilding shows, if you love it, just do it. Do it because you love it. Do it because this is something you love. Don't do it because there's some sort of outcome that you have to achieve, and if you don't, then you're not going to do it. I will say this about wrestling too. It's the only time in my life where I feel I am 100% present, because if I'm not, there's a potential for injury or a risk of injury. You know, if I'm not 100% intentional and engaged the absolute whole time I'm doing it, I could get hurt. I could, you know, I'm going to get taken down. So it requires so much focus and concentration that I believe that it takes me out of all of the busyness of my life and the thinking that I'm always doing on a day-to-day basis, and it allows me to just be 100% present in something. So if you are in your 20s, late 20s, 30s, or 40s and thinking about wrestling or doing any other martial art, I highly encourage you to do that. I highly encourage that you should take the time to do something like that you enjoy, that's going to give you a useful skill, that you're going to walk around and feel competent and confident in yourself and your capabilities. So let me know if you have any questions on that. If you want me to post videos or things like that, I'm more than happy to.